we're beginning sort of in situ. It gets with like a running start into
Yeah,
Dumbo. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I'm Micah Brenner. This is Eric Anderson.
I
And
have
like, keep
one.
going. Keep
Yeah,
going
no.
with your
So
thought.
we do this a lot. We're like, all right, how should we do this? And then we're like, we should just start recording. Um, yeah, we're talking about Dumbo today, and it's an interesting story on a bunch of different levels. But I don't know. It's one of the early Disney movies from 1941. I realized when I was going back and watching through it how much of like when you go to Disneyland and kind of the circus vibe and not just like the Dumbo ride, but just like, the carousel sounds and all of that. It's like that the movie is where that kind of started. Do you know when Disneyland opened? That was the 50s, right?
I should know. My mom, I think, went there the year it opened. Let's
That's
see,
cool.
1955.
Okay.
And so
Yes.
Dumbo came out in 1941.
Hmm.
The United States was not yet in World War II, and it was a blockbuster.
Mm.
Like it made a ton of money. It was originally conceived as a short.
Interesting.
Disney
Yeah.
acquired the rights to Dumbo when it was an unpublished children's book. So that
Oh, interesting.
is
Okay.
early on in the process what movie companies do now, which is they like just hunt for these rights and
Right.
they'll option people's books before they're published
Right.
just on the off chance that it's a hit and it's worth making a
Yeah.
movie out of. And so I don't
Yeah.
know if that's how they did it, but
That's interesting. And it like I have no frame of reference for what animation standards were like in the 40s, but um it kind of had to feel like, all right, the animators are flexing a little bit. We're gonna this pink elephant scene, we're really just
oh
gonna
yeah,
like build up on it, and we're gonna circus and clowns and all the stuff. We're gonna make this come to life on
yeah,
screen with pencil and paper here.
yeah.
Um and I know on the Disney Plus, it's remastered version, but it looks clean.
Yeah, well, and when it originally came out, everything would have been, hand painted and
Hmm.
optically photographed. And,
Yeah,
I'm sure it was, I mean, it was a blockbuster, it was a banger. Animation was pretty novel. There weren't a
yeah,
whole lot of games in town. And so this would have been, the whole family would have been there, I imagine.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Interesting. You said like they bought the rights up to it because I didn't know Dumbo was a children's story or anything. I just knew it was a
yeah.
Disney movie. I don't think I had not thought of it as anything but. Yeah. I mean, the story's fairly simple. It's elephant at the beginning. All the storks are delivering babies. There's definitely like an infant mother theme throughout this, and then Dumbo's delivered late for some reason, and his mom is the one who's like, oh, when is my baby gonna come?
My thoughts about trying to kind of read into it, in the 40s, we have a lot more understanding and compassion and tolerance for disability and
Yeah,
congenital birth conditions and things
right,
like that
right.
now than back then. And so, like for example, my
Mom's
daughter,
struggling to get pregnant would have been a bigger thing, or what it just wouldn't have been
mom's
talked about.
yeah, mom's struggling to get pregnant. Also, male elephants are conspicuously absent from the entire movie, other
Sure.
than Dumbo himself, who
Right.
uh,
Is a baby.
his given name is Jumbo Jr., so we
Yeah.
can guess that his baby daddy's
Mm,
name is Jumbo. So somewhere out there, there's a bull elephant named Jumbo, and he's not in the picture. And so
sure.
so we got elephants. It's all female elephants portrayed, other than
Yeah.
Dumbo himself. And then, yeah, it's a late birth. He has a birth defect.
Hmm.
He's also mute,
Yeah.
conspicuously mute through the
Yeah.
whole picture.
Yeah. No
And
dialogue for
so,
him.
yeah, no dialogue for Dumbo. And so, I wonder if there isn't an element of like special needs
Sure.
baby in the world,
Yeah.
and so I think about like, so my daughter has Down syndrome,
Yeah.
and in the 40s, babies with Down syndrome, like frequently it would be like, okay, well, you're going to be institutionalized like for
Right.
life. And
Right.
that was at the time, that was the height of understanding and medical
Hmm.
care,
Yeah.
and maybe the height of expediency for what to do.
Sure.
Nowadays, people are overwhelmingly choosing to terminate those pregnancies. And so
Right.
that doesn't happen in Dumbo. Everybody in Dumbo, wants their baby. And so, so yeah, I wonder if the stork that got lost, he kind of
Hmm.
doesn't know where he's going. He's got to check the map 3 times. His
Yeah,
map's
yeah.
all torn up, right? And he
Yeah,
gets
that's
there and he
interesting.
delivers the beautiful bouncing baby boy and
Yeah,
sings the
yeah,
song. And there's immediately, it's interesting when we were in California, we got a lot more of this, but
yeah.
the other moms see your special needs baby and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like,
Oh, yeah.
and now we're in the South and the Midwest, wherever Texas is. I guess it's its own region, and
Yeah.
um, they see that your daughter has Down syndrome, and they go, "Oh, she's beautiful. How wonderful for you,"
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like Dumbo,
Yeah.
mom, of course, adores Dumbo. There isn't a
Yeah.
moment of hesitation, right? But the
Yeah.
other ladies are like, "Oh, scandalous."
Well, at
Uh,
first they're like, "Oh, she's the sweetest thing." They're saying all the nice things, and then it's like, "Oh, scandalous," and then like they quickly sour on Dumbo from being part of
yeah.
their tribe as the
Yeah, and their tribe is interesting. Like this will come up later when we discuss some other aspects of the film, especially as it's presented now. But
yeah.
the nobility of the elephant kind, when
Yeah, they're the elite uh they're the elite debutante ladies who are like,
yeah,
"Oh, I would never put up with that." Even when they're doing their circus act, they're like
right.
being hoity-toity with each other.
Yeah, they're so poised and dignified. And at
Right.
one point she says the we elephants, are a noble race. And yet all they really do is behave completely ignobly.
Well, and then as soon as Dumbo's mom tries to protect Dumbo, they call her a mad elephant and throw her in jail.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
and
So
they don't, and they're not defending her at all, even though she's doing that. They're like, all right, yeah, get her and her kid out of there. She's embarrassed us.
she has committed some kind of cardinal social sin by loving Dumbo.
Yeah,
And Dumbo makes his like debut at the circus, and all of these little like Southern cracker kids come out and just like abuse Dumbo.
yeah,
So they're bullying the special
yeah,
needs,
yeah,
elephant, and Mama Bear comes out and um, and she kicks their ass. I think does she
yeah.
spank one of them? Because
Oh
she
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, and so then of course they have to tie her down and she goes to
right,
jail. She's a mad elephant, right? So it's not
right.
just she's crazy.
Yeah,
She's not just incarcerated. She's
she's going to the
institutionalized.
madhouse.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They're 5150 on Dumbo's mommy. Um, and so now he's truly orphaned. It's raining and he's cradled in her arm through the bars. It's just heartbreaking. Like
yeah.
Dumbo might be amongst the saddest Disney movie. Like it hits some
Oh yeah.
real lows, right?
Well,
Um,
I mean, like the scene where Dumbo comes to like say hi to his mom and in the cage and they're hugging with their trunks through the bars. It's like this and like the way it's animated, he looks like my 1-year-old. My like his he is a baby. Like at no
yeah,
point in this is it like this is a growing or maturing. It's not a coming of age story. This is a baby elephant the whole time.
yeah. So what is the infant is immediately confronted with the cruelty of his circumstances, the
Yeah.
cruelty of his society, like the
Yeah.
civilization around him,
Yeah.
the cruelty of the exterior world, the
Yeah.
cruelty of like he goes right to work,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
like no
Get to
child
the
labor
top of the
laws.
pyramid. Oh, you can't
Yeah,
do it? Okay, cool. You're out. You go be a clown.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's interesting. So yeah. So this movie, it's worth saying, it's only like 58 minutes of running time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's super
Yeah.
short, and
Yeah.
really only like four things happen in the whole movie, and they're just
Right.
like very belabored, right? So
Right.
he's outcast, and then he befriends this little mouse.
Yeah.
And so the mouse and the elephant is a cool thing that
Yeah.
nature gives us, which is the
Yeah.
inversion of like your expected power
Right.
dynamic
Yeah. Yeah.
that the mouse terrifies the elephant. Of all the creatures in the world,
Yeah.
like an elephant will beat the hell out of a lioness, no
Yeah. Yeah.
problem. But for
Right.
some reason, a mouse comes along and they're like mortified. And so
Yeah.
fear is a very interesting thing that the fear that a mouse can inspire can cripple an elephant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this little mouse doesn't get more humble,
That's
doesn't
good.
get less noble, right?
Yeah.
He's a parasite. Like
He's a
he's
rodent.
vermin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a rodent, and so he comes along, and of course he's dressed like he's
Circus
what are
leader
they?
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the circus leader. What do they call it? The drum major. Like he's
Yeah.
dressed
Yeah.
like he's supposed to be leading the procession, and
Leading the
he's the
marching band.
mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he is this little character that represents sort of like the inversion.
Hmm.
And
And
he's an advocate. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean he's the one who kind of he's not like a dad figure, but like he's the closest thing. He's kind of like his older brother who kind of raises him. Um,
Yeah, he's got a soul.
yeah.
He sees
Yeah.
Dumbo. He immediately identifies, what's really going on. This
Yeah.
is an infant. He's being abused for no reason. Everyone
Yeah.
treats him like crap,
Yeah.
and give him a chance.
Yeah.
So then what happens is he Russian? Is he Italian? Like I don't know. This
Who?
kind of the
The
ringleader of the actual circus, this sort of like
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ambiguously
Yeah.
foreign mustachioed
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
He has his like epiphany, has like his
Yeah.
this right, and then the mouse, who is personified as like inverting dynamics, whispers in his ear like you're going to put Dumbo at the top, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so he preemptively accelerating Dumbo to the place he will eventually arrive, but
Mm.
he's sort of cheating. I
But
don't know what.
he's trying to push Dumbo to find his like you're gonna be great. You're gonna make
Yeah,
a name for yourself, even
yeah,
though no one likes you and everyone's
yeah,
like that's because he sees like his way to do it is he's gotta like be the star. He's got to excel in circus in
yeah.
some way.
So he sees potential.
But you could argue that like this is an abused baby elephant. Like quit trying to push him to the top of everything. Like is that
Right,
like this kid needs some room to grow?
right. Might be a little premature. Like maybe.
Well, it's certainly not like a nurturing mother instinct. Say it that way.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly not that. So he comes along to spur Dumbo along. It doesn't work out,
Hmm.
but it might be better than no one ever coming along to spur him
Yeah.
along and just
Yeah.
remaining pathetic and trod upon, and that's all that ever comes of Dumbo. But he at least goes
Right.
like, okay, give him a shot. He goes to the top.
I mean, if
Uh,
nothing else, it's like he's certainly not coming in as the perfect surrogate parent or someone who's going to be like the wise guide around this. He's kind of like
yeah,
flawed himself, um, but he
and
cares about the kid and he wants him to like, okay, let's figure like go do the best thing. Oh, you're not ready for that. Like he doesn't have a gauge for that, but he cares and he's wanting to push him forward out of his circumstances.
but there's also a side of it where he's wanting to kind of be the ringleader early. Like maybe I'm going to discover this kid, and then I will be a part of making this great show. And
Yeah, yeah,
right, so there's an element of it
right.
of like I'm gonna hook my line onto this
His
guy.
ambition is drive his ambition for himself is trying to push him for. I'm gonna make this kid a star, and then I'll be
Yeah,
the agent that did it, right?
yeah. I
Yeah,
discovered him, right, and like I built this
yeah,
act sort of like
yeah,
and that he gets to sort of like rise with Dumbo's star.
yeah,
So there's a little bit of his motivation that's questionable, where we see enough that like okay, he's a good guy, but he's also like kind of got a thing for being at the center and like being rich,
yeah,
and so he's using Dumbo a little bit.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It goes horribly wrong.
The circus collapses, and then they make him a clown. So he's like, they put the face paint on him, and his whole clown act is he just has to jump off the big thing and come crashing down. And
Yeah, and so when he becomes a clown, the reveal of it happens with like the society women are all together,
yeah,
and they're talking about how he should get spanked and he should get like run out of the circus, and they
yeah.
go, it's worse than that.
I think they actually say like we should beat him, like he deserves to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
beaten, right? And then they're like, no, it's
yeah.
worse. Yeah,
Right. Well, and so when they say, yeah, we should spank him, and they go, well, there's someone's taking care of that. And they go, oh, what happened? Did they beat him? Did they? And
yeah,
they're like, it's worse. It's worse than anything you can imagine.
Yeah.
They made him a clown. So clearly, clown is the bottom, the rock bottom of, like, if there's a social hierarchy, it's the
Yeah.
clowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll revisit that later and talk about some other stuff too. But so he gets pushed to the, not just the clown, but he's the suicidal. He's the human.
He's
He's the pachyderm sacrifice clown.
yeah. His whole act is he gets just chucked off the top of the tower into the tide
Right.
pool, right?
Yeah. So he gets. Let me see. Let's scroll through it. He gets thrown through. They light the thing on fire,
Hmm.
and then they throw him off a building, which seems to be the punishment reserved for any society's least desirable thing. Is if you really, really want to humiliate them and you don't think they're worth anything, you throw them off of a building. And so then they all drunkenly celebrate, right?
Right.
So if we want to see like who are the real pieces of shit in this movie, it's
The
these
clowns.
clowns,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
they get wasted and they're
They get wasted.
laughing about next time we're
Let's
gonna,
throw him off an even higher one.
yeah, like what are the
And that idea
limits?
is so good. We're gonna go ask the boss for a raise for it.
And so that's the limit of their thinking, is like, let's just suicide him harder. Okay. And then
Oh, it's a sad story, man.
sad story. And so they're all proud of themselves. And so then we have like this really amazing sequence where Dumbo and the mouse get wasted.
Yeah.
And
And they kind
so
of go on a psychedelic trip.
yeah, so go on the psychedelic trip, and it's like 6 minutes, like this whole sequence. So it's like 10% of the movie
Yeah.
is just Dumbo and this mouse wasted. And
Okay, can I ask you a question on that scene?
yeah, yeah.
Is that because I'm watching that, is that just like an animator flex? Is that just like, hey, we got the best animators in the world. We're gonna do 6 minutes of just like the stuff you've only seen in your visions when you're drunk or on mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna animate that. And would that just been mind blowing at the time, that sequence? Because
Yeah.
it's not really a story element. It's just
Yeah,
what
but
they're
what if it is? Like, okay, so first of all, yes,
okay.
100% animation flex. The stuff
Yeah,
they're doing in there, they're all doing it by hand.
yeah,
No movie had ever done anything remotely close.
yeah,
Like, even if you went to go see, I think Ten Commandments wasn't out yet, but like you just think of like the biggest blockbusters you can imagine.
yeah,
You had never seen effects like this because there
yeah.
weren't effects like that. And
Right,
so
right.
you're seeing stuff you can't imagine ever
Yeah,
seeing on screen. It must have been absolutely hypnotizing.
yeah,
But none of this shit is on accident,
right.
because like that is a really expensive scene, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like expensive rotoscoping in there, and they're
Yeah,
like, dude, and he's like doing their samba with the electricity, right? So there's all kinds of things. The distortion and the bubbles as it like
yeah,
goes over their faces, stuff like that's tough, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's still tough. Anyone wants, you show me an animator that feels like sitting down and hand animating this thing, and especially in the opening credits, you see like animation was done by like 8 dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's insane what they put together. And
Huh.
so yeah, but what else is it? So this is also the part of the, like, if it is really important to the story, and I'm gonna assume it is because it's
Hmm.
10% of the movie.
Sure.
So this is the part of the story in a private eye movie where they usually get drugged.
Hmm.
Like something happens where they're rendered unconscious, and there's like a new frontier that they
Yeah, yeah,
navigate. Like
yeah,
the Big Lebowski plays on it too, right? It's the
yeah. Oh,
exact
yeah,
period
yeah,
where like Sam Spade would get slipped a Mickey, and like
yeah.
and
Right.
he so in Big Lebowski he gets slipped a Mickey and he goes on
Yeah,
his trip, and something key happens. Like he
yeah,
puts together some tiny part of the plot, and some
yeah,
tiny part of his real motivations come
yeah,
through in
yeah.
his trip. And so like what happens to Dumbo in his trip?
I mean, they kind of allude to that's where he starts flying. They end up in a tree.
Right. He let's see, like he multiplies. There's tons of these elephants.
Yeah,
They sort of transcend space and time. They become
Well, they
technicolor.
fragment. It's all a bunch of elephant heads. It's all different body parts. Everything kind of pieces out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it unravels and re-ravels. So he
Hmm.
sort of like disintegrates a sense of self and then reintegrates a sense of self.
Yeah.
And we're probably reaching here, but like there's the pyramids, right? So it's
Yeah.
like you're this ancient bloodline of like,
Mike, we're the story dads. Of
power.
couse we're going to be over analyzing this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, we're gonna go
That's
for it.
people should expect that from us by now.
We're gonna go for it.
But
Uh,
like, but like, okay, yeah. But I think that's the theme of a lot of those like little psychedelic sequences that happen in just stories. Like when it's all
yeah,
of a sudden like they're stuck, they don't know what to do, they black out, they lose consciousness, they get drugged, or whatever, something happens, and they ascend into their subconscious and they wake up and then they have something that they need. We kind of
yeah.
like touched on it
There's
somewhat
a
in
breakthrough.
Moana when
Yeah,
they go down to the depths and um get the hook from the hoarder crab, and
right.
that's a
Well, and
psychedelic
again with
sequence.
her
That's a
grandma, right? Like she
yeah,
potentially has like a psychotic break where she
yeah.
throws away the heart. She decides I'm not the one. Like it's
Yeah.
like suicide time,
Yeah, yeah.
and grandma comes to talk to her in a vision,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Right.
so as far as we know, that's the same thing. Like maybe she was asleep for it. We don't know. It's
Yeah, yeah.
portrayed
Yeah,
as
yeah.
like it's really happening to her
Yeah,
because we're in a
yeah.
magical world, but like
Right.
she kind of has her little trip.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
hallucinates about these
I think
ghost
like it's
ships and
that's one thing about like Dumbo is it's like it's so like pronounced like this is a psychedelic sequence like Winnie the Pooh kind of has it too.
yeah.
Um but
And the Good
like
Dinosaur has a great one, which
oh yeah,
someday we'll talk about.
yeah. But like I mean it's a common thing in a lot of
Yeah,
these Disney flicks that we're unpacking where like something like that will happen, but like with Moana or these other things like it's not as pronounced as it is here where it's just like
yeah,
pink elephants in the clouds, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
Pink Elephants is also, and I think we could probably look it up, but I think Pink Elephants was a trope about being drunk
Yeah, okay.
before Dumbo. And
Yeah, okay.
so
Yeah, makes sense.
uh maybe this is partially like a love letter to getting alcohol back because it wasn't too long prior to this that
That's
alcohol
interesting,
was
yeah.
illegal.
Also, I'll just note like, bold move having the um disabled baby just get wasted,
Just get
right?
wasted
Yeah.
with some random stranger
Yeah,
mouse
yeah,
that is trying to push him to the top of a elephant pyramid.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so they get wasted together. So they
yeah.
go on this walkabout. They have
Yeah.
like a vision quest and this journey that they go on,
Yep.
and we've probably mined that for about as much as we
Yeah.
can. But some of it is like a loss of innocence, right? So they
Yeah.
already know he's being framed. He's getting set up to be murdered. Like
Hmm.
we're gonna murder this elephant. We're gonna make a mint off of it. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
put him in a snuff film. We're gonna exploit this baby, right? And
Dumbo is a snuff film.
Dumbo
I wouldn't have made
is
that connection,
is an
but
attempted snuff film. They're gonna kill the
that's
baby in front of a
all
live audience.
alternate
Uh,
ending, man.
yeah, yeah. The ending that almost like if that feather didn't
Watch out
work.
for that director's cut. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's like, fuck it, I'm getting wasted.
Yeah.
And so they get wasted and there's like a loss of innocence. There's a
Hmm.
surviving like a rite of passage kind of quality to it.
Yeah.
But here they are, they wake up and they're at the top of a tree.
Yeah.
And
Now, what happens here, Micah? I feel like you have some ideas on this sequence and how it's framed when you watch it on
yeah,
Disney Plus now.
yeah, we can talk about how it's framed, and what's funny is like we're making the assumption of how it's framed. But before getting to how it's framed, what we encounter
Okay.
is like the first birds, the first wild animals that he's encountered. Every other animal he's encountered has been in the zoo.
Domesticated, yeah.
So he's encountering like these free spirit wild animals that he's never encountered before. So he's left the farm, right? Like he's off the
Yeah.
reservation and he's up in a tree. Like he's as far out of his element as he could be. And
Hmm.
so he encounters all these birds. And the mouse uses whatever skewed logic to figure out, like, well, the only possible way we could have gotten up here is flying, right?
Right.
Uh,
Well, the birds kind of suggest it, right? The crows.
yeah, do they sort of jocularly
I
say,
think
like,
like what you guys flew up here is like, oh yeah, we
he's
probably
like,
flew up
that's
here, right?
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so retrospectively, like, hey, it makes sense. And you must be able to fly. And
Yeah.
so they have like what's my favorite song of the whole thing, which is the When I've Seen an Elephant Fly song.
Yeah.
And so they ridicule the hell out of him
Yeah.
because why wouldn't they? Everyone has for the whole
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And then the mouse chews him out.
Yeah.
And the mouse has chewed other animals out, and the other animals don't give a shit. But these guys are
Yeah.
like,
These guys have
you're
a
right.
heart.
They
Yeah.
have a heart. You're right. We were mean to this kid,
Yeah.
and that's not right. And
And let
so
yeah.
and so maybe you can fly. Let's find out.
Yeah.
And so he does.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's talk about the crows, right?
Sure.
Maybe that's what the name of the episode is. Let's talk about the crows. So we touched on it earlier with the Jungle Book,
Yeah.
ironically enough, where it's like completely unfounded. Disney's preamble,
Yep.
the preamble that they
Do you
put
have,
in front
do you
of
have
me.
the preamble? Do you want
I do. I actually pulled it up because I
to? Okay.
paraphrased it before, but I thought let's go ahead and read it in its entirety.
Yeah.
So what happens is we'll just frame it, right? So you love the canon and the legacy of Disney so
Hmm.
much that you have given them your billing information and your address. You've installed their app on your device. You have
Devices.
sat down with your family and you go, you know what? I remember really loving a movie. Let's watch it together as a family. Let's watch this thing, because we love it, because we're grounded in the story. It meant something to me. And then what somebody who knows who they are, who knows who empowered them to do this, but for some reason, somehow, institutionally, as you hit play on your movie, it comes up and it says, this program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. Okay, that's pretty value laden. Is it a negative depiction? Is it mistreatment? Right? It's like the whole words are violence thing.
Hmm.
These stereotypes. Oh, okay. So that's what you're talking about. Stereotypes. These stereotypes were wrong then, and they're wrong now. Great. Okay, so we're going to go back in time and make moral judgments about people who are probably dead, and we certainly don't know anything about their creative process. Rather than remove this content because we're so open-minded and congenial, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, which means it 100% must be harmful, right? So they're
Right.
telling me what the impact is. Great. We're going to learn from it and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Great. This is that conversation. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe. Well, we'll see. To learn more about how stories have impacted society. Oh, so Disney is now, not only are they telling me back in time how awful I am and they are for enjoying this movie, but also they are going to be the definitive voice on how stories impact society. And you can visit
Yeah.
this website, and I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that particular URL gets like 9 hits a year. So anyway, so that's the preamble. That's the
Yep.
what I like to call it the "you're a bad person"
Right.
preamble.
Right.
So
So we mentioned when we did Jungle Book, we were kind of trying to throw out different ideas on how that applies to Jungle Book. I'm still kind of vague on that, right?
yeah,
Um, Dumbo, I think it's pretty clear what it's referring to here, or
it
what part of Dumbo it's why it got slapped
yeah
with that label.
yeah it certainly can be. But so like
No, I think
so what
for me it's clear like that scene caused them to the scene with the crows is the reason why that one got put there. Now, should it be?
right?
What do you
And so
think?
And so I'm going to go out on a limb and guess because again they don't say, right. It's the same
Right,
thing that
right.
with Jungle Book is it frames the movie like this, and it really comes down to it's the good old CRT idea from Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo, those patron saints with fake names, who say it's not whether racism took place, it's where did racism
Yeah,
take
yeah,
place, right? And so this thing is so Orwellian, it's perfect. It like plants the sin into your mind and goes,
yeah.
okay, now enjoy your movie through a racial lens. And uh and so you're watching Jungle Book going like, what, let me start sorting characters into race instead of just
Right.
receiving characters
Yeah,
for what they do in the story and
right.
whether I like them or not. Right. And then also it conflates, and this is another thing. I think this is an important topic. It
Yeah,
conflates stereotype with racism.
right.
And this is tricky because it's like squares and rectangles. Like, yes, it is possible for a stereotype to be implemented to further like a
Sure.
racist agenda, but also stereotypes exist above and beyond racism
Right.
or race, let's say. Like
Well,
there is,
even the people who wrote all those books, talk about like, well, this is acting white or acting black or acting whatever. Like this is these
right,
it's all stereotypes, right? This is how
right,
males act. This is how or dress or whatever. Like that's the waters they're swimming in. So it's
right.
not.
They're
uh,
more than happy
yeah,
to ascribe stereotype. They just reserve the right to decide which ones are good and which ones are bad.
right.
And stereotype is in some ways a phenomenologically downstream from heuristics,
Sure.
right? So like I have a stereotype of a chair.
Hmm.
Now, especially as a storyboard artist, when I'm drawing and stuff, like when it says, interior kitchen, and I have to just draw the scene without any photo reference or anything, I have stereotypes of kitchens. I have a
Sure.
stereotypical sink with a backsplash and a window and a curtain,
Right.
and like unless I take a moment to slow down and kind of adjust some sliders in my head, I'm going to just do a stereotypical kitchen. So
Right.
is that wrong? Have I maligned or somehow diminished kitchens? Well, no, I have a heuristic for
Right.
a kitchen. And like I think of like Dave Chappelle, which one of he's got the awesome bit about his white friend Chip, and like
No. Yeah.
and he does like his voice for Chip,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's hilarious because like
Yeah.
yeah, that's what your white friend probably sounds like to you, right?
Right.
And so and stereotype plays into cartoon, which we've talked about too.
Yeah.
Is a cartoon is an exaggeration.
Yeah. We talked. Because I remember the when we did the Jungle Book, all the monk like they're beatniks, right? And so they're
Right,
doing a stereotypical beatnik kind of thing. King Louis
right.
is the head of the beatniks in that, right? And
Yeah,
so
and they've
like
got these
there's
like these gangly arms, and they look like they have bell bottoms on. Like
yeah,
same with the
there's a way that
buzzards.
they
Like one of them
dance, there's a
looks like
way that they
yeah,
talk. It's
yeah,
a there's a style to it.
yeah. And so like the elephants in this movie are exaggerations of elephants. They're saggier and
Hmm.
fatter, and they're and like
But
uh,
even their behavior, the way they talk, it's stereotypical like hoity-toity British ladies. I don't know
right,
British, but
yeah,
like it's there,
like
right?
snooty society ladies, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
exaggeration. And so the conflation that any stereotype is automatically racist
yeah.
is that's not an assumption that I am gonna like forego.
So
Yeah.
what happens here with the crows, right,
Mhm.
is uh stereotypical black men in the 40s, street
And
guys that were
I'm
yeah.
gonna go further than that and say like stereotypical Southern
Yeah.
black guys that are potentially sort of like homeless. Like maybe they're
Right.
hobos. Maybe they're
Right.
right. Like we're not done with the depression yet at
Yeah.
this point. Like there's still a lot of economic downturn, and we know we're in the South because we saw the
Right.
video of they're in
Florida.
Florida
Yeah,
heading
yeah.
up north to the Panhandle,
Yeah.
and so it potentially, and again, if we give them benefit of the doubt, because I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that they weren't like, oh, let's see, the only characters that actually advocate for Dumbo in this, let's like really stick it to those Negroes. Like, I just, I don't. maybe that's what they were thinking, but I think they could have done a better job of being mean-hearted, like race haters than
Right.
they do, if
Well,
that
they're
was
not
their agenda.
they're not the villains. They're the ones who are
Right.
the most moral characters in the story,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you want to go down that road with that, because the weird thing is like there's actually a potentially pretty cool message in there that would have been real subversive for the South in the 40s around that time of like these are the moral characters who actually helped
Exactly.
Dumbo out, which is actually a pretty dang cool thing. But if
Right.
we're already going into the movie thinking about like, well, where's the there it is, that's the bad thing.
Right.
That's now it's like you totally missed that.
Right. And so you have the potential to realize that you have a character that's being maligned and discriminated against from
Hmm.
day one.
Yeah.
They have ginned up all of this sympathy for this character,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to assume, that like the mathematical majority of people watching this movie are not Southern and they're
Yeah.
not black, and none of
Yeah.
them are elephants because elephants
Right.
can't watch movies. I'll stand by that one. Uh, and so they've seeded sympathy in your heart, which is
Yeah.
what stories are great for, is to
Right.
help you into an experience that's not your own.
Right.
And so then you connect your own experience of sympathy with this other group that has been maligned, that has been discriminated against, that people have counted out. They live on the other side of the tracks and they're out
Right.
there, in the wilderness and they stumble
Right.
across each other. And they're the only ones. It's the Good Samaritan,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And so the Good
Yeah.
Samaritan is the only one that looks at Dumbo, who's had his ass kicked, and offers
Yeah.
them medicine, right?
Yeah.
Offers him aid. And so instead of watching the movie and just having this experience, we have it preloaded for us that it's wrong. It's wrong that these guys are even in the movie. Like, what
Yeah.
do you want to remove representation from this movie? Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Well, because I mean, yeah,
Otherwise,
that it's if it's wrong, then what's the you take those things out? Like that's just not part of
right?
the movie. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. There's
And
you
so
know there's
and so by
cool like
extracting them, you'd ruin this what is essentially a social justice message of like don't underestimate people based on
right,
externalities.
right.
And I would argue, like I promise, what they're not talking about, the most negative depiction of anybody in this whole movie, frankly, is the
Hmm.
clowns.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, clown lives matter. Like what, stop, the destructive stereotyping of clowns that they're all like drunken white hicks
Right.
that
Right.
enjoy animal cruelty. Uh,
Right.
so so anyway, so that's that's my rant on why anti-racist Dumbo is actually the takeaway here is that this is actually a wonderful moment, and
Yeah.
if you can just let go of the pearls
Yeah.
that you're clutching and enjoy the vocal performance of these
Hmm.
actors that are playing the
Yeah.
crows, and the way each crow is super unique in the way that
Yeah.
they're
And the
depicted. Like the
personalities of each of
elephants
them,
all
right?
look the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's musical numbers awesome, and
Yeah.
they're compassionate. And then back to the story, I suppose, unless you have more to say on the topic.
No, no, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, my main thing with it is like when you approach a story from the lens of like I gotta find the thing that's bad, which I just think that little preamble at the beginning kind of puts in the back of your head. Like there's just so much good stuff that you miss. Like
Yeah,
it's not like we could rant and we have and we might in the future about like how annoying that is and sanctimonious it comes off. My bigger thing is like there's so much good stuff that you miss. It's such a it don't let that flatten these stories for you when you see that
yeah,
stuff come up. There's nuance and interesting things that are happening like some of the things we mentioned, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, so
Entering a story with that level of cynicism,
mhm,
I would say, is just not the right way to engage with any story.
yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and it speaks to me about coming from a position of someone who just doesn't really like stories very much. If
Hmm.
that if what I have to tell you about a story is that you should hate it before you even start, it says something more about me who creates that statement
Right.
than it does
Right.
about you or the
Or
story,
I
in
mean,
my
and
opinion.
and and even if it's being generous, even if it's not like me who um or like you should hate this story, going to that extreme, but like, hey, there's bad things, watch out for the bad things. Like they're gonna get, it's just like it's it assumes the audience is fragile. It assumes people can't see nuance. It assumes
Mhm.
people can't like engage in positive ways around that.
Yeah.
That it's like, I mean, it's a big part of why we like to do this podcast because there's so much richness in these stories. We want to unpack that. We want to spend our time doing that rather than looking at like, where's that stuff? And I feel like a lot of these older Disney movies, their perspective for people kind of gets flattened because of all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And I think it's easy to throw people from the past under the bus
yeah,
because
totally.
they aren't around to defend themselves.
Yeah, we've been
And
doing that as humans for a long time, and we're smarter
yeah,
than those people. And I think
right.
that's a sign of foolishness whenever people do that.
Agreed. And a real lack of humility in the face
Yeah,
of it's so hard to make. It's so
yeah,
hard to make even a bad movie that
yeah.
is forgettable. Like even that is hard. And
Right,
so making a good movie that somehow lodges itself into the future
right.
is a miracle.
Well, and
Like
like for me, like as we've kind of gone back and rewatched these, like how can I find what is it about this that's lodged in the future? Oh wow, that animation is wild for 40s. Like wow, okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
crazy. How could they have put that together? And these the animation, the kid looks like my 1 year old, like all that stuff just kind of like it's been an interesting experience rewatching a lot of these as an adult in that way, which again, like if you're just operating from that lens, like you miss, and that's too bad.
yeah, yeah. So at this point, so that the crows they show up, they're the smash hit cameo of the movie, and
Hmm.
they give him the magic feather,
Yeah.
and so the mouse reaches a point where now he's truly advocating for Dumbo's sake,
Yeah.
where
Mm.
he's recognizing something true about Dumbo that's important about him,
Yeah.
that's valuable to him, ultimately integral for his survival, like in general and immediately. Because like, how's he going to get out of the tree
Yeah.
without dying?
Yeah.
And he has this upcoming murder attempt on his life that he's going to have to navigate.
There's that. Right.
And so he uses his powers of persuasion. Like we know he's a con man because he conned the ringleader into putting Dumbo at the top of the pyramid once already. So he uses them for good this time, and he
Yeah.
uses them to
Inspire Dumbo, gives him the placebo. It's like,
yeah,
oh, it's the what is the other movie? Uh, in Big Daddy, when Adam Sandler tells the kid like these are the magic sunglasses, you're invisible, and then he's gets confidence to go do stuff. He pulls that.
right. Yeah, yeah. And there's another story of like the magic toe shoes or something where this girl
Yeah, yeah,
doesn't think she can dance and she right.
yeah.
And so it's is it Dunning-Kruger? Does he just sort of push him into like too stupid to fail? Or is it like is it ontological change where it's like if you come from a place of like I am a flyer.
Yeah,
Well, what
yeah,
does a
yeah,
flyer do? A flyer flies. So it
yeah.
kind of ushers him into this state of like, well, what if you just thought you could? Like, how
Well, it's
would
a
it change?
psychological shift,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's a mentality shift where whether it's a placebo, 'cause people throw out the idea like placebo, like oh, it's just a placebo. Like placebo is a powerful psychological shift that
yeah.
works for people, right? So
It is
it's not a
actually medication.
yes,
Like,
it's a real thing that it does. It just
mhm.
doesn't chemically affect parts of your body in whatever way too. So
Right.
it's like believing that like he can fly and he has the ability when they already suspected he had the ability because we got drunk the last night. We woke up in a tree, so something happened.
Yeah.
Um, so and then he goes and flies, and his last act and the movie's over.
But there's like the crux, right, where he
Yeah,
loses the feather.
right, right,
Right.
yeah,
And so like in every good heroic structure, you have like learning the
right.
lesson and then having to prove that you really learned the
Okay, see, but
lesson. And
I
so
forget that because all this happens in like
oh
two
yeah,
minutes.
happens like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
this is also speaks to like a larger phenomenon of movies in that era is that like
yeah.
movies in that era just like they didn't do denouement. They hadn't figured it out
No,
yet.
yeah, yeah,
Like you watch these like sci-fi, horror movies from that era
yeah,
and like if you watch Mystery Science Theater and stuff like that or like just watch old movies, it'll be like, and then the atom bomb blows up the giant Gila monster, and then like they just walk away and go,
Yeah.
science has done this, and like
Yeah.
in the credits roll, and so it's a little bit of that. Is it's like,
Yeah.
okay, can he really, like, is it the feather or is it him?
Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
would be a whole act, in
Sure.
like a
Yeah.
more recent movie.
Yeah.
But they just sort of squeeze it in. So the clowns try to murder him. They push him off the thing, and the mouse goes with him.
Yeah.
So the mouse has this act of faith where he's like,
Uh,
he's along for the ride. Like they're both gonna die.
and this whole thing, like, I'm laughing because it's like 30 seconds. It's like,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I was watching this late last night and I'm tired. I'm like, all right, is the movie over? But it's like, Dumbo flies, and then that, like, all this happens, like, it all kind of wraps up in the last like 30 seconds of it.
Yeah,
But there's so
and just,
much in there. That's as you're getting into it. I'm like, gosh, how much did I miss by just like kind of not being fully present for that last little bit?
it is that final step in the hero's
Yeah.
journey where it's like, okay, you came back with the antidote, but is it going to work? Like, is it really
Yeah.
going to like rescue
Yeah.
the village or whatever?
Right.
So it does. And then, like
Yeah.
you said, like they flash some headlines. Oh, he's famous.
Yep.
He's rich.
His ears are insured for $1 million.
His ears are sure for him. Like these things that were his like laughing stock, the most humiliating thing about him is now worth a fortune. It's like the
Yeah.
most precious
Yeah.
thing. And so like that thing that you perceive as your weakness may actually be your superpower. It may actually be
Yeah.
your strength.
Yeah.
And then mommy is in a big, gorgeous, train car. It's like, looks like it's all silver and bullet
Yeah.
trainy, and they get to hug at the end. So it's finally reunited with mom. Mom is placed in the position of honor that,
Yeah.
so she goes from, rags to riches. And then the mouse also gets what he had pursued with using his powers somewhat exploitatively and
Yeah.
negatively. He gets what he wants because he used them altruistically. He used his powers of persuasion in an act of altruism and self-sacrifice, and so he got rich. Is what he ultimately wanted. So somehow I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing that we have spent more time talking about Dumbo than the actual runtime of Dumbo.
Yeah.
So let's make that a milestone for StoryDads.
Right. I mean, we had a couple thoughts going in. It always happens with these movies where it's just like, I don't even know what we're gonna get into. Like, it's short. We kind of like watching this, like, oh yeah, there's all these different kind of aspects of it. So, yeah, but I guess there's no like villain comeuppance or anything that's there. Like the
villain
snooty elephants
comeuppance
kind of
is-
get put in their place. I don't
Yeah,
know.
they kind of get put in their
like,
place. Like they get their comeuppance. It's like the best vengeance is a life well lived.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one was fun. And I know, we kind of had some different takes on that. Love to hear other people's stories. We think conversations about these are a ton of fun. So if anyone wants to jump in and vehemently disagree with us or tell us why we're wrong or jump on board, we'd love to hear it.
Get in there, let us know. And then next time is
Have we decided next time? Hercules.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Hercules is on the slate. So we're jumping forward in time to the early
90s.
2000s, the late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. It's kind of in that in-between period of Disney. But Hercules is great. So
Yeah. All right, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
We were the StoryDads.
We were, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, man.